Hi, Liam O'Gogan here from the Does It Matter research program. This episode is one of a series of videos in a case study thread involving the Central Statistics Office in Ireland, and now leading on to an intervention by the Data Protection Commissioner in Ireland. This video is an update of a dialogue that I'm trying to have with the Assistant Data Protection Commissioner. You'll see here John S. Keys, and I'm sort of moving the description of this video thread into this idea of talking truth to power. In an earlier email written to me by John Keys back on the, if I just hold on here, back on the 6th of May, John Keys determined for me that unilaterally that he was that the only way in which I could communicate with these people was only in writing. He refused to speak to me on the telephone. And the previous video in which I replayed that a conversation that I subsequently tried to have with John Keys on the 11th of May 2016 is the content of this video. So there you see, and it's up on YouTube. You can see at the moment this is the I'll just refresh that so that video at this point in time has so that's the video there, has 82 views on this. So in that video what I had done is I had spoken directly to John and a person who works for him, as has now been established, Payam Shalchi, a senior investigations officer, and I had through that medium decided to set a set of questions for John, which I think are quite nuanced and require much more than a simplistic forwarding and backwards of endless emails trying to resolve this. And my proposition was I set the questions for John to address. If he refuses to communicate with me by phone or wherever else, he had accepted that he would respond to me by written correspondence. So I presume the request I have is to correspond with me in any way he wishes, but to address the questions. So I'm really just taking you through an update of that scenario. So what I have, after creating the video, I sent John an email. So again, just the email I sent him was on, okay, so the email was on the 12th of May 2016 at 17:38 when I had completed producing and uploading the video. So I basically directed him to the video. First I wanted to determine, just to be clear, and I still have no clarity in this, I am working off the presumption that the John Keys I'm talking about is this individual who has been described in this Beauchamp's website. So Beauchamp's is a solicitor's website. Don't really know why this guy's in there, but there he is. He's shown there. Again, to remember, he's a honours Bachelor of Law. He's a barrister at law. So this is a significant legal mind that we're dealing with, and would understand the issues of advocacy and argument and thesis and antithesis and synthesis and all the rest. That's part of his fundamental training. So I had so I wanted him to confirm that he was in fact that individual. Otherwise I need to go back and correct a lot of any errors that I might have introduced. The other thing is that the second character who emerged, who came in as a blocker for John Keys and took over, and you know, as the evidence of my previous video shows, was quite in my view, acting quite unprofessionally and prevaricated about providing his name, rank, serial number, etc. Turned out to be a person called Payam Shalchi. And it was interesting because I did a search online for Payam Shalchi, you know, just did it like I did for John Keys, just to see his digital footprint. And I did find something about Payam Shalchi in Ireland signing some sort of phishing or a petition about some phishing issues or something. Don't know what that was, but I did see another one in on Twitter. Again, I can't be sure that this is the same Payam Shalchi. It's the only person of that name. It came up in an Irish Sense, and I just thought it was interesting that there was a tweet here which I just thought, wow, it's really synchronistic with the conversation that I think that I'm trying to develop with these people. And you'll just look at it there. Let's see. Yeah, well, that's not the right one. What do I see? That's what I see. Where is it? Okay, I don't know how I. Okay, we'll just explode that a little bit. So it says, the ignorant man answers before listening, objects before understanding, and passes judgment on things he does not know. No, I won't try and pronounce this name because I don't want to insult whoever that language is. I don't know what it is, but it's some imam or something. So it obviously comes from a different culture than the traditional Irish Catholic culture, but still, I mean, if these are the values that are espoused there, I fully in agreement with them. So again, I'm not sure. As I wrote to John in my email to him, I just said it was most synchronistically relevant in terms of Payam's disposition to me. So if it is the same Payam, then there's some way we're on the same page here. It says here, the ignorant man answers before listening, objects before understanding, and passes judgment on things he doesn't know. So I think if you go back and listen to the detailed short excerpt of the conversation that I had with Payam, I mean, I think there's huge levels of reflection there for Payam about what he was doing. Anyway, I gave John the link to the video in which so I was working within his sort of constraints, his very restrictive, coercive and censoring constraints, which I believe are absolutely invalid. He said that I couldn't speak to anybody in his office because in some way this is going to contaminate some investigation. And again, you're a barrister. I've asked you, John, to set out your rationale in relation to that. And just to say that subsequently I've been looking back in my emails about other dialogues I've had with senior people, because I've had an experience with you people in data protection somewhat maybe in a year ago or something like that there, and just to say that I spoke at length to another assistant, somebody presuming at a similar level, Tony Delaney, and he spoke quite fluidly and willingly with me about nuances, etc. And I'm really, it's unacceptable that I'm being blocked out in this way. But anyway, I've set a set of questions for John to answer, so I just wanted to fill you in on what has happened as a result of that. Okay. Having emailed John on the 12th of May at 17:38, I then received a response on the 13th of May at 13:26. So that's the next day. And it comes from data protection from John. And John says, "Dear Mr. O'Gogan," he refers to my email of the 12th. So therefore, he acknowledges receipt of that email and its contents. And he says, "I note you have not addressed the specific issues raised in my email of the 6th of May, and I would be obliged if you would do so without further delay." So they were, let me just go and have a quick look at what they... So briefly going back to that email of the 6th of May, this is where the areas that I'm particularly interested in, this idea where he told me that appears to have no legal, that I appear to have broken some sort of an act or data protection act under these sections here. So it's quite complex stuff that I'm being told here. I'm also being told that, as I've described before, that it appears to me they're saying that the CSO may have breached the act, and there was an allegation that the CSO has breached the act, and I've already previously stated, sure, I couldn't have any of this data unless the CSO had actually breached the act. So we seem to be very interested in creating problems for me and having taken enforcement orders against me. So what I had done in my video is I had specifically, that other video, the previous video of my conversation with John Keys, is I had set out my questions. So I had specifically addressed a number of questions that I replaced him. So when he says, "I note you have not addressed the specific issues," I'm concerned here that although I've sent the information and the email to John and the links to the video, that it appears to me that he may not have either listened to the video, watched it, or listened to the question that was, by the way, John, I was specifically speaking to you then as I am now, that he hasn't done this. So I had to obviously reply to him. So let me just look at, so a short while later, so he wrote me at 13:26, I wrote back to him at 14:04 to say, so just again, so I'm reading it into the record, John, for your attention and for the public evaluation of this, what I call talking to truth to power dialogue. I said, "John, please do me the professional courtesy of confirming whether you had taken the opportunity before you had sent the email to me to be among the 48 viewers so far," so that's interesting, "who have watched my video at that address, in creative compliance with your rather dictatorial and evidentially unsupported restriction and censoring of my means of communication with you, I invite you to share the video with those in your ethics-forming milieu for productive reasoning reflection. So just to say that, I mean, you might wonder the figures of 48. At that time, whenever it was, 22 hours ago, there was 48 viewers. I just noticed this morning, I just haven't done an update on this, but it's up to 82 views at the moment. So again, I think this is obviously narrowband stuff here at this time, and my effort in doing this is to create a long-term, sustainable, reusable learning object for, hopefully for educational review purposes, for future viewers in the public interest. So we're up to that number of viewers at this point in time. So let me go back and see. So it appeared to me, so I needed professional courtesy, John. So out of professional courtesy, I am emailing you, and now I'm sending you another video, which I will be emailing you a link to when we're finished this. I set out a number of questions for you. You have all the opportunity to world as a reusable learning object to literally scrub forward and backward along the timeline. I mean, that's the beautiful pedagogical value of all this material. Like if you just look at this thing here, that you can be saying something, so and then you can play it back and say exactly, what exactly did the guy say? This is the individual we're talking about. So this is the purpose of reusable learning objects, is that you can, study them at your own pace. If you're not sure of something, you can remove confusions. I mean, it's my educational thesis in relation to this, and using this for a number of years towards the latter end of my lecturing sphere. This technology was becoming much more to the fore, and it's something that for me, as a learning style for me, I find it a wonderful addition. So again, I'm mindful here, John, I have asked you that unless you confirm otherwise by return email that you're not the John Keys who's presented here in the Beauchamp's website. What you're doing on a solicitor's website, I really don't understand this. But anyway, that's whatever you do in your own time is your business. And I'm not alluding to anything here, guys, just to remind you, this is a barrister I'm talking about. So, I mean, we're really treading on eggshells here in what I'm trying to do. But I am trying to talk the truth to power, and I'm doing the best that I can to illuminate the reality of my experience and share that. So, so I'm trying to say, John, if you're not the guy that I've depicted there who has a significant track record, such a significant track record that you merit coverage by Beauchamp's, please tell me, so otherwise I don't want to be, annoying some other person placing his picture on a website if it's not actually him. So I have asked you to do that, John. You can do it in any format you wish, by the way. Obviously, if you wish to email me, that's fine, but I'm formally asking you to do this. The other thing I just pointed out to you that, I mean, I had been granted a facility by Tony Delaney, another assistant commissioner, to talk to him at length about nuanced details. So suddenly, are the rules changed? Why me? Why now? And John, please explain to me, why am I being blocked at this stage now? I'm not sure how long you're in this business. I'm not sure if John or Tony Delaney still is in the business. You don't appear on the organisational chart, as I said previously, so it may not have been updated. Or you may be a black ops guy. You may work in a dark area there. I'm not sure. But I did say in my email, again, John, so the fella says you've been told to be sure, in video and in writing, to be sure. A series of questions which I set out. So I've set out a series of questions, and I said I've sent them out with my limit of my communications ability, and I'm relying on this idea of Gardner's multiple intelligences. This is the most suitable communication style for me, to be clear in my mind that I'm making it clear to you what I'm asking you to do, if you can work that out. Anyway, you can play back the reusable learning object if you want. So, John, it would appear to me that you may not have actually examined or listened to the questions in the video, but they're there. They're specifically there. They're as equally valid as anything I might put in writing. And you have given me no argument to defeat the argument in terms of meritocracy of argument for what I can't do. And again, I have asked, John, that you perhaps, it was Friday yesterday when I wrote to you, that you take time over the weekend to review I've suggested that you ingest and digest the content from a range of the video material on my YouTube channel on this bigger question of does it matter, because I mean it's real important to me that I am, you know, I have no argument with you personally. I think this is a much bigger issue than you or I, and I don't want this to be a dick measuring contest. I'm not interested, but I'm probably past it anyway in all that area. So but I do think that I am hoping that there could be sort of a road to Damascus change in your perspective when you think about what I'm trying to achieve here and the common civic duty that you and I have. And I am hoping that after the weekend, that I said perhaps next week we will find ourselves on the same side acting as brothers positively in the public interest. And the image that came into my mind there was John Lennon's "Imagine all the people living life in peace." So that's what I would like to achieve, folks. That's my core objective here. And just for completeness, sometime before sending that email to John, which I sent at 14:04 on the 13th of May, I had separately sent him another email at 12:13 early that morning, and it was a link to a number of Facebook posts that I've been engaged in over the last number of days, because obviously I've posted this the link to this phone call video on Facebook, and there has been some interesting interaction in relation to that. I mean, there has been an immediate visceral, I think, response by somebody saying that you, John Keyes, are the most corrupt man in Ireland, and I'd like you to appreciate that. I mean, in that area, I don't have this sort of visceral response to anything. I mean, I don't know that you're corrupt or not. I don't have any view about that. I certainly have no proof that you are at this point, and certainly the claim that you're the most corrupt man in Ireland, I think you'd have a long way to go, no matter how hard to get into the queue. But I think it's important, I mean, that I'm interested in interrogating facts and detail, so I wanted to share that detail with you. And in doing so, it had reminded me of a quotation which I had often discussed with my late mother about reputational damage, which I think we should all take into account here. I mean, right now we should be mindful of the O'Higgins Commission report into the affairs involving Sergeant Maurice McCabe, Oliver Connolly, Alan Shatter, Martin Callanan, and this whole idea of people and their right to their reputation. But that concept, Seanachal Ascailge, gur is bio dinner Teresia Vulta, ach ni bio e Teresia Cointa, loosely translated, a person is alive after being beaten but not after his good name is taken. So in relation to this, I want to be particularly careful. That's why I asked you to confirm whether you're the John Keyes or not. But I'm interested in, you know, sticking with the facts. So that's the first part of this video. The second part is I want to address further questions to you directly, John, that I wish you to take on board and decide how you intend to respond to me. But I expect no longer a time frame in terms of your reasoned timeline of response than I would have got if I gave you an email. And I repeat, at any time, just scrub back over the timeline here if you're not sure on what I'm talking about. So I'm back to the original email, John, you sent me on the 6th of May, and you know, I want to make it clear to you, this is an area of knowledge or material that I really am unfamiliar with. So it says here, the position of this office in relation to the further processing by you of the personal data of 17 individuals, make you a data controller within the meaning of the Data Protection Act. So I want to know, John, I want to understand how I suddenly became a data controller. So I'm interested in that. I can't see how suddenly I've become equivalent to somebody like the Central Statistics Office and have the same sort of impositions and demands made me. I'm interested in that. I'd like to know that. The second thing is the processing appears to have been carried out, again all these language, appears to have been carried out without the consent of the data subjects concerned and without any other obvious legal basis for so doing under Sections 2A1 of the Act. It therefore appears to have been done in contravention to S2.2 1 and S2A bracket 1 of the Act, and in those circumstances the information currently available to this office would suggest that you may be in breach of the Act as a data controller. So to be fair, John, I'm trying to get my hands around that, or my head around that. What does all that mean? So just to say to you that this troubles me, and late at night last night I woke up and I had my iPad beside me and I said, look, I'll try and find out something about this Act. So I just want to share with you, John, and the viewer, the difficulties that I have trying to understand this, which is why I would like the right, I think my civic right, like everybody else, has been offered, and I was offered previously in talking to Tony Delaney of your organisation to unravel this and try and work it out. I mean, I would have thought that you people are there in some sort of advisory capacity. Once again, this unravels slightly more, because while I was searching for that information last night, I came across another email from an earlier interaction, or my previous interaction, very unsatisfactory interaction, folks, with the Data Commission. And this is from an email sent to me by a John O'Dwyer, Deputy Commissioner. I don't know, these are all deputies and assistants and commissioners and everybody else there. So John, I'm not really sure how many are in top jobs up there, or who zooms who bosses who. Are you Payam's boss, or is he your boss? Is John O'Dwyer his boss? Is Tony Delaney anybody's boss? Does anybody do things, or is just chiefs and Indians? I'm not really sure. And I had originally been trying to specifically write to Helen Dixon, the Commissioner, as a result of my complete dissatisfaction, what appears to have been a complete joke of a proposed complaints process that you simply don't have, or a process which doesn't stand up to any analysis in terms of fairness, due process, etc. And that's another thread, folks. That's a whole layer of recorded material in the bin that I need to come back to. But this is relevant. I just want to pick out something from this email from John O'Dwyer. So just let me get a date on it. It was sent to me on the 25th of April 2015. Oh, strangely enough, just somewhat over a year ago, by John O'Dwyer. So he became the latest protective interventionist in your organisation. But I just thought this was interesting, because just in relation to the present experience of coercion that I feel I'm experiencing. So it said here, okay, you will appreciate, just listen to these words, folks, you will appreciate that this office, in attempting to investigate complaints and find amicable solutions, plays the role of in the middle of a data subject and a data controller. Wow. So, I mean, you were talking about the language of amicability here, and sitting almost like a mediator in the middle of something. I have no sense that you're sitting in the middle of anything. I have a sense of getting whacked, being told what to do, and being prevented from the opportunity, as one would with a mediator, to tease out the identity, the nature of the problem, the methodologies of finding ways around the problem. But I'm being told, no, you do this or else, and you're not allowed to talk to us on any other basis. And strangely, when I had a problem with Eircom that I want to address, a much bigger organisation, I'm a little fish, I'm being told by John O'Dwyer, now hold on here, we're in a sort of softly touch. Listen to this. Because the office is concerned to seek an amicable resolution to a complaint, as we are obliged to do so under the Acts, it does not act swiftly to make it a formal decision of a breach and to seek enforcement action automatically against the data controller, particularly where the office is in dealing with an isolated non-systemic complaint. And then it goes on, we believe that the data subject is ultimately delivered with a better outcome through this process. We remain committed to resolving this matter where possible. So please, John, would you explain to me why a year later I'm experiencing a radically different philosophy of being dealt with by you people? Firstly, so can I take it that you people will act as swiftly as you did in my case, which, look, it's a long story. So it takes let me just say, it takes months and months and months and months and months and months and months of people doing absolutely nothing, and me having a record of that failure to be in any way professional or proficient. But based on this philosophy of amicability, etc., I have not experienced amicability from you, John. I have experienced expulsion. I have experienced just a moment there. Just something that jumped into my mind there. I had a long conversation with one of the people who's been following this. I've had various feedback from different people. I just thought it's interesting to curate into this. But this is a person who has existed in the private domain of public, in the private commercial domain, and he finds himself really, really irate at the behaviour, as he sees it, of public servants. And he mentioned these words. He said these are 5 features. Again, we're talking about systemic organisational behavioural fractals. And he asked, think of these 5 words. He talks about hubris, complacency, narcissism, arrogance and sophistry. And this is how he described listening to the interaction with all of you officials at senior levels in both the CSO and the data protection. So just to say to you, what I'm not experiencing, John, is an openness and an engagement by you to try and find ways to even for me to understand the problem. And yet when I was in a similar situation acting against a multi-corporation like data protection, in fact you people seem to be incapable of achieving absolutely anything, and making me feel really vulnerable as an individual. In fact, I ended up thinking that the data protection concept was a complete joke, as a result of my experience, to which I will attest to in another thread when I get round to production. This is very demanding stuff, this. Okay, so that was the intervention by. You need to work out whether this guy, John O'Dwyer, is your boss. Maybe you need to talk to him, John. Or maybe he needs to talk to you if you're his boss. Or maybe somebody has to talk to Helen Dixon, because I thought she was everybody's boss, although she doesn't even want to get involved with any of this. Let me go back here. Yeah, sorry, what I was trying to do is, this all happened late last night. I was trying to work out my way through these acts, especially these sections here. Section 2A, bracket 1. The way these acts are written is fabulous stuff. So I decided to go off to the data protection site. Better start somewhere. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing, John, I'm sticking in data controller. Now, I've been forced to do this because you won't talk to me. So, Jesus, what right have you to force me to do all this? I'm trying to do it. So let's stick in data controller and see if I can find something here, right? So it says, are you a data controller? So I'm trying to work out stuff here. And I'm trying to work it. It said, just listen to this, folks. It says, in essence, you are a data controller if you can answer yes to the following questions. Do you keep or process any information about living people? I just need to zoom into this. I think there's probably nobody in the country, in Ireland, who can't answer yes to that. So am I right in saying here that everybody in the country, anybody who keeps or processes any information about living people? So it's not too many people they only just look after dead people, so the rest of us presumably engage with living people. So if you have information on your phone, if your information, people write to you letters, you have information about living people, so you are a data controller. So I'm wondering, what does that mean for me? Am I a data controller like the CSO or a data controller and all of this? So this area I'm not sure, but I was just trying to find out those parts of the acts. Okay, let me look for them. So I don't know what to look for here. I'm going down here, data protection, and somewhere it says law. So let me see what it says here. So it talks about law here. Okay, so again, I find this difficult, John. I just want to tell you, I am finding this difficult. My sense of navigability through these is quite complex. Can I recommend to you people that you might look into the idea of preparing reusable learning objects like this to guide and navigate people through things? I think that would really be a good use of your time instead of harassing people who are trying to act in the public interest like me. So I'm going to try and go to where I went last night, I think. So it talked about an administrative consolidation of various acts to be here. Okay, so I'll try and click on this. Okay, an act of 95 pages long. So I need to try and find these sections. Let me try and do a search here. I'm going to try and search for this term S2A1. Let me try and see if I can do that. I'll just use again, folks, if you press Control and F down here in the left hand corner, you'll find something. So I'll just do a quick cut and paste, so I try and stick with the levels of accuracy. I think this is very demanding of you, John, to expect that me as a citizen, I should have to develop all these skill sets just to find out what I'm supposed to be doing. So it goes round here and it's trying to search down at the bottom here. I don't know if I'll get a chance in post-production to be able to zoom in and out of this, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm trying to produce. But anyway, I'm going to try and highlight all of these, and it says the phrase isn't found. Okay, oh God, John. Oh, okay, let me just check. Did I do the right thing there? I selected this S2A1. You can see that, folks. I went off into the act, which I found from your website, John. I used Control F, that feature Control F, in my browser. I think I'm in Firefox, yeah, Firefox. It looked for those words, I couldn't find them. It says phrase not found. I don't know how I'm going to do this. So let me go try the next one. Maybe this is going to be a little bit better. This is a different search term, so I'll try Control C and collect that, put it into this thing here. I didn't expect this was going to be the issue. I was using an iPad on this. I'm on a desktop at the moment, so let me try this one. See, highlight all. So nothing's coming up there. So let me just find something. I'm just going to pick that word there. Let me just stick this word in here, including, and see if it comes up. So that's what I do when something doesn't work, like an engineer. I go check something that I can already see exists there and try and find, oh, there you are. It finds including. It finds all the times that including is mentioned, highlight all. So it shows me 3 matches of the word including there. See them? So it's in there. So that works. But so the information you gave me, John, it's not really very helpful to me. John, I'm not happy here. You've given me information here. I can't even find it. I'm trying to find this stuff. And I did find it somewhere else last night, but it's not very traceable for me. So I really wanted to talk to you. Like, we could have had this conversation, John. I could be on the screen. You could be on the screen. In fact, we could have shared through Skype. You could have shared your screen through Skype, and you could have shown me that which I need to understand in order that I can be a compliant citizen. And all done, by the way, very amicably, as pointed out to me by John O'Dwyer. Is he your boss or you his boss? Whatever, I'm not sure. So look at, folks, I'm just going to take a break and try and work my way around. I'm not sure what this. I see S26 there, so I'm going to keep looking for an S2 something. So I seem to have found an S1 somewhere there, so maybe it's further down below again. I'll just pause and... Okay, now I've used the search terms you put in. I haven't been able to discover them, and I can see that because they're not assignated in this way, but I have come up with a section 2 and a sub bracket 1. So that's that one. I appear. Now, John, I'm really unhappy. You have led me around and goose chase to try and do something. I have asked to speak to you. You won't speak to me about this. You give me this misleading information. I'm really disgusted with you. Sorry, folks. That's just me reaching close to I'm just looking at my processor driver here. Sometimes just bring it onto the screen. Sometimes my processor CPU history goes right up there, and my blood pressure and frustrations tolerance threshold sometimes is really clipped up there. You can see the old CPU usage just pops up there. Anyway, bit of digression there. So I'm trying to work this out. It's this: a data controller shall, as respects personal data kept by him, comply with the following instructions. So that's pretty clear. It says the data, the data, or as the case may be, the information constituting the data shall have been obtained, and the data shall be processed fairly. Oh, so we're back in the fairness business here. So I was given this data without even having to go to the Freedom of Information Act. Now, I've given you an example before, John, that as I understand it, based on material given, decisions made on behalf of the Office of the Information Commissioner, that material which is granted under FOI, Freedom of Information, is regarded as available to the world. So material which is granted before I even have to go that far should be even more available to the world than that. So I was given this information by an executive decision by the higher executive officer in the Census Division, backed up by and supported by, and still retrospectively supported by, her superior, the Assistant Principal Officer. So I don't know how much fairer than that you can get. And by the way, I would say it was me, only me, that created the caveat that I shouldn't be given people's personal detail. The data shall be accurate and complete, and where necessary kept up to date. So, well, look at, I don't know whether it's complete or accurate. I don't know that. All I know is that the CSO, the Central Statistics Office, would you expect that it would be accurate and up to date? I have no expectation of quality of these people. That's up for you to say. It says shall have been obtained only for one or more specified explicit or legitimate purposes. Well, I mean, my legitimate purpose is to interrogate what I consider to have been, or the evidence to date would show me to have been, a highly suspicious and unfair carrying out of an interview and evaluation process and selection process for the job of a census enumerator that I applied for. So that was I don't know how legitimate you need to be. The legitimacy for me to share that data has to do with the significant damage and fear that any citizens of this country should have into an expectation that the same organisation with its operational practices could in any way comply with the legal guarantee that we have been given that our data would be securitized for 100 years and never released by the CSO, a fact which is that my data exposes as being untrue. Now, look, there's a lot of other stuff down here, and John, I suggest that you need to help me work through this issue. But I want to move on to the other one because I found something interesting. Now, I was in the middle of the night, so maybe I was just dreaming, so let me move on. And that was this other section. And I think, I look again where I think I maybe need to look at section, this is to A1. I think that might be it. So let me see if I can float through this and look for it. So I'll just pause this for. Okay, I've scrolled down to this. I think this might be other sections. So let me say, I think, John, and you know, I would ask you, as a professional, would you clarify if the data that you gave to me, which I've tried to seek, is actually this data here? And I've come across this act through your site. Not, I didn't go and do this myself. I'm trying to stay within the data set of your material. And this is how unhelpful I find it. Okay, so it says, personal data shall not be processed by a data controller. Now, you people have determined I have a data controller, unless Section 2 of the Act. So I don't know that, I can't see whether I haven't complied with Section 2. But this is the business I'm interested in. At least one of the following conditions is also met. Okay, so the one it said the processing is necessary. So I just thought that was interesting, okay? So let me just see. I saw this somewhere last night. So the ABCs, etc. Okay, I just thought this was interesting here. The processing is necessary for the administration of justice. So it seemed to me that this was one of the, okay, the lubricators or facilitators of, which would justify me publishing this information, that it was necessary for the administration of justice. Well, I know, you know, justice should be done and seen to be done and all that sort of stuff. I'm seeking justice. I'm seeking fairness and justice. I'm not getting very much of it, and all I'm meeting from all of you people in supposedly regulatory positions is some coercive negativity pointed at me. Anyway, let's move on. I just thought this was interesting. C4. Again, you can work out all the little subbies, John. Write them out more accurately the next time. It says, for the performance of any other function of a public nature performed in the public interest by a person. Now, I think I've already stated to you this, John, and in fact in all my dialogues in relation to this and all those videos I put out, my whole action here is in relation to work in the public interest. It is a matter of significant public interest. In the year 2016, on the 24th of April, the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rising in Ireland, which created our supposed democracy, in a time when we're being guaranteed a 100-year guarantee of absolute security that none of our data will ever be released by the CSO, and that the expounding of this incorrect statement continues to be held valid and posited by the chief statistician of the CSO, Deirdre Cullen, wherein, and the other videos that I have up online in relation to this topic, she is clearly there saying this, the CSO have never given anybody's personal private data to anybody, and they've already done it in this case. So that's what this whole thing is about. So I mean, my public interest here, and the reason I originally wrote to 3 addresses at Data Protection, Info for Data Protection, Paula Nerney at Data Protection, Deirdre Kenny at Data Protection on the 24th of April was a letter of warning. I sent it to all addresses that I had in my contact list, all over, anywhere I could, as wide as I could, like Paul Revere's right. I was trying to lever that information and make it virally available to people before they filled in their census, that they're filling in something that is not only is the guarantee unsafe, but I was giving traceable, auditable, reproducible evidence of that breach. That's what I've been doing in the public interest. I've tried to explain this to you people again and again and again, and yet I find myself persistently coerced and prevented from the possibility of even teasing that out with you, who is a barrister and an honours law graduate, etc., if you're the same John Keys that, you know, I depicted in the video. So that was, I just want to hold it. I need, John, look, I'll go back. This is why I said I needed to talk to you. I don't get this stuff. I can't correlate that with what it is what I'm doing illegal or whatever in relation to this. Is there an alleviation of any obligation imposed on me because of my desire to do this in the public interest? And I want to repeatedly say here, folks, the exposition of individuals' details and those individuals, I harbour no ill will or any interest specifically in those people. The most important thing is I, as an ordinary Joe public citizen, would simply simply be wiped away and disbelieved if I were to make a statement this material was released, because people like Deirdre or Deirdre Cullen are out there saying no, we never give this information away. Trust me, I am the chief statistician of the CSO. Sure, why wouldn't you be believed? Just think laterally here, guys. I mean, Maurice McCabe, Sergeant Maurice McCabe, was completely, he was being trashed until the point at which he released the contents of a phone recording. And that's the only thing that has saved him. That is the only thing that has saved. This guy would be history. He'd be totally history. Nobody believe in him. So the little guy has no chance against the power regime. So all I've been trying to do is produce data. While I was scoping around on late at night on your website, John, trying to work out stuff in relation to that, this stuff came up then, just crossed my mind. So I've been trying to do a search here for the last while, just territorial application of the Data Protection Act. I haven't thought about that. So it talked about data controllers established in Ireland, and then it talked about data controllers established outside the European Economic Area. So that started to ask me lots of different questions there. So I'm just trying to find out, are there implications for, where does this act apply? Does it apply? It talks about here, if a data controller is based outside of Ireland but uses branches of agencies in Ireland to collect and process personal data, does the Irish Act apply? So, because we live in an international space on the internet, like I'm living up here in the Wild West in Donegal, but on a daily basis I'm in communication with people all over the world and different online blogs and blabs and online discussion forums, etc. So I'm wondering about this information and where is data controlled from. So where's the reach of the Irish data controller? Now again, I don't have the resources or the skills to go into this in detail, but I'm saying to you that last night I have memory, and I asked you, John, you're the specialist, you're paid a lot of money to do this, to point out to me, is my interpretation correct that if the data which was breached to me by the CSO, and that data breach of which I was trying to draw public attention as a public interest matter to prevent people from being deluded into thinking that their information is actually being kept safe by the CSO because of the real level of lack of attention to detail, incompetence, and I would believe lack of professional integrity in this regard. I'm making that as an allegation, if you want to call it that, based on the evidence that I have produced to date. If the documents say that I put up, which I've put up in issue.com, which is not based in Ireland, but if a person was to take that data, or if I was to, for example, if I just moved over across the border into Northern Ireland and uploaded it from a Northern Ireland environment in a Northern Ireland web environment onto a web platform which was not based in Ireland, am I wrong in saying that this material would be beyond the reach of you people in the Data Protection Ireland? That nothing illegal could be connected to me or something in relation to this? Am I wrong about that? Maybe you can help me. Now, look, I want to tell you folks from the outset, I have been involved in trying to ascertain what the rules, what the law, what the logistics and everything are in relation to this with both the data protection and before then with the CSO. But I have made it clear that I am not interested in the specific details of the individuals. I mean, they are victims of this absolutely, as I am. In fact, I am greater so because in fact of them producing or releasing much more reputationally damaging, I believe, material about me personally. And by losing my data or whatever, if any of what they say is to be believed. But the difficulty for me is I'm making a claim that data was breached. The CSO are still holding the line that they have never breached data. Who's going to believe me? Who would believe Sergeant McCabe unless he had his evidence of a recording, the transcript of which was read into the Dáil record? It now appears in an Irish Times article yesterday. I can't say that with refer. Just to keep us on record here, this is 20 hours ago, so it's on the 13th of May, article Irish Times, key figure in Garda, controversy challenges shatters claims. So we're back here to our man Oliver Connolly, right? He's now back in the business. He's still at the business of grave injustice that a conversation with Garda whistleblower McCabe, which was secretly recorded and had resulted in the creation of an alleged transcript. So he's back in the business of denial here. It's interesting, and I see what he says here. Mr. Connolly here said while he gave evidence to the commission and assisted it as much as he could, he declined to validate the alleged transcript. So, you know, he's not even admitting the content of this phone call that everybody else seems to have accepted happened. And just further down, this is in the Irish Times, paper of record or whatever in Ireland. And this very senior person, I mean, if you look at the other videos I have on examining the legitimacy of using or making phone recordings, I've gone into the detail and I show his press release and the paperwork on top of it. And this man is a barrister or whatever, like you, John, actually appears to be in numbers of jurisdictions and has every letter you can imagine after his name. So seriously believable guy. He said, he added, this is Connolly, he had refused to validate either by way of confirmation or repudiation any alleged transcript of any conversation he had when confidential recipient, precisely because any interaction he had with complainants was private and confidential. So look at, guys, this is just multiple layered, what I call multiple layered lying. Can't say it any clearer than that there. Like, see the way he's covered himself. I refuse to either confirm or repudiate an alleged transcript of a phone recording. Now, folks, without this phone recording, Sergeant McCabe would be dead and buried. And everybody be sailing on to the sunset and saying, you know, bad guy, whatever, bad guy. In fact, he would have been one of the two disgusting guys. The old disgusting term that was used to describe him by the then, and subsequently resigned, retired, sacked, whatever it was, because we can't seem to get clarity on that either. Then Commissioner Martin Callanan. And this guy is still out there plugging away here in the Irish Times as of yesterday, the 13th of May, and he's still getting some level of credibility somewhere. So I'm in a situation here of the reason that I have my material, I put it up there, is because it's the only way the little guy like me could actually get legitimacy and credibility. Like, what I'm saying is true, not because you like me or don't like me, but because I've provided the evidence. And what we have is the CSO and now the data protection people trying to suppress that evidence. Now, are they really interested in trying to protect the individuals' identities? Well, I have already made proposals to the CSO to engage in this. I believe that data has been made available to the data protection people, because the CSO tell me they're, gone in with their hands clean, etc., to data protection. All these people are sitting around doing nothing. So I separately have come up with a modality whereby I believe that I can serve best to move the details of those individual victims, just like I am, off the table and concentrate on the core issue. I need to say very clearly that and I wish you to either contradict or correctly inform me, John, if this material is to be placed up outside of the Republic of Ireland and on platforms which have nothing to do with the Republic of Ireland, could you please confirm yes or no that they are therefore outside of the territorial reach of the Irish data protection laws? Yes or no? That's all. Now, this will all be solved. I have already said to you and to others in relation to this that this will be solved by the production by the Director General of the CSO, Pádraig Dalton, who, in a most disgraceful lack of leadership exposition, has simply gone off to the desert or gone into hiding around this whole thing. But, the professional response should be he should pen a letter on his headed paper or in his official capacity. Obviously, I want it as a digital environment. Email it to me, in which he takes full responsibility for the disgraceful misbehaviour and illegal conduct by the the CSO in breaching the data protection, both of myself in losing my data and releasing my data into the ether and likely to be in some house in Ireland where somebody else can read it, and in releasing other individuals' data to me, and that I can put that in as a placeholder, which then justifies or gives credit or credibility to the claim that I've made that in the document, which is now professionally redacted by me, that there was actually real data there. And I have major concern of the suppression of truth, that this will not happen. So that's really what I'm trying to do here. It's nothing else, folks, nothing else at all. So this has been quite a long update, but again, the stuff is convoluted. I'm doing it for do it specifically for your attention, John, and also because you've decided to take your sidekick Payam along with you on this journey. I think it's in his interest that we should look at this stuff as well. I need to make you aware that I am absolutely cognizant of the contamination of objectivity that appears to have taken place in your organisation. I specifically have asked you people, Paula Ford has undertaken to deliver from me the audit trailed, metadata rich email that she was working with and how it passed through your system, so that I can identify exactly where it came from. If I'm to deduce from the information that Paula gave me that it was given over to her by a colleague in the office, and given that she claimed that it didn't come through the info at data protection that I addressed, the only two other addresses that I sent it to were Paula Nerney and Deirdre Kenny, and both of those people are contaminated by they certainly have a material interest in, and a negative material interest in, my persona as a result of our previous very unsatisfactory engagements, of which I will deduce or reduce evidence to in a different thread subsequently. But I am making you clear and putting you on record that I believe that what's happening inside in your organisation is quite toxic, in fact. And so I need you to take that into account. Anyway, folks, for now, that's an update, and I expect, John, when you reply to me, as is, I believe, your public and civic responsibility and duty to do so, and I have made it clear, and I've made it clear that I want these questions answered, and your man, your boss, or maybe you're his boss, John O'Dwyer, has subsequently, as previously as I've shown there, written to me to say that you people take your time and you want to be amicable, etc. So I want to be amicable too, John. I just haven't experienced a lot of that from you so far. I haven't seen any transparency. I've seen a lot of opacity. I've seen a lot of sense of coercion. I've seen a lot of, when I show you these, when I go looking for this data, according to the navigable loops that have gone into your place, find it very hard to find. So your stuff isn't very navigable. You're a very user unfriendly site. I have suggested that you people might take some time to make public, user-friendly, reusable learning objects. Great tool, this Camtasia. You can do lots of wonderful things with it, John. I'd love to see you people spend some money, developing effective strategies for moving forward to protect our public interest. Anyway, folks, from the Does It Matter research program, thank you for now.